as the Croatian Parliament under the Habsburgs. It looks like we've known each other forever.
There we go.
And I have a very, very good feeling walking into this chamber. Now, I'm well grounded on the negative side of things. I know very well what I do not envision from tonight. I do not envision this as a night where anybody speaks to you, but rather where those of us in the media and in government listen to you. I mean, literally every single one of you who cares to speak. The ground rules, I don't have a stopwatch. There was an African tribe that had a rule one time that said any member of the tribe may speak at the tribal council for as long as he can stand on one foot. Really. There is no legislature in the world that has come up with a better rule than that. Anyhow, I'll simply say that freedom from interruption implies responsibility to be reasonably brief. So when you start seeing us get edgy, that may be a good time to look for punctuation. I wanted absolutely no politicians here. I mean, I don't care if the President of the United States comes or the mayor of the town, but if so, he's an individual person and not an authority trying to gain votes or gain prestige. Absolutely no media has been invited. And I want to distinguish this from other groups that are merely efforts to promote somebody's agenda, whatever it is. Absolutely no hype. We only mentioned this twice. Only twice. You are here by virtue of hearing one announcement or the other, which impresses me tremendously. Now, to review my understanding, and then I'm going to sit down and do something to which I'm unfortunately unaccustomed, and that is listen. Once a listener said, Barry, why do you hog the conversation? Why do you talk so much when you're interviewing somebody? And I said, because most of what everybody else says bores the hell out of me. But something tells me I'm not going to be bored tonight. My only concern, this is all I can contribute, and it's not much, but maybe it's a start, is there is something grotesquely unfair going on when a city like New York is on the brink of racial violence or even racial tension, racial hatred, where everything polarizes instantaneously. Because all my life I've had the feeling that some people call it the silent majority, and that's not a good thing for me to bring up because that's a right-wing term, meaning the ones that are really against. I don't want to make it left and right. Let's just say the silent majority minus its political implications. It's a good term. I have a feeling that we in the middle don't want. Who wants to go out and kill somebody? Who wants to fight? Who wants to be hit or shot at or stepped? Nobody, obviously. And we're the overwhelming majority. We are the constituency for peace, for racial peace in New York. And we have no power. We have no organization. The closest thing to an organization we have is right here in this room right now. By the way, that's another caveat. We want to resist the attempt to be an organization, at least right now. I will settle merely for having everybody's mailing address and phone number insofar as you are willing to give it to us. I think that's as close. My bone marrow will curdle if somebody says, well, let's elect some officers who's going to be treasurer. I don't think we ought to do that, my opinion. But I believe that we ought to find some way to find the other hundreds and the other thousands and the other millions of New Yorkers who say, look, in this case, the white cop is wrong. In this case, the black perpetrator. In this case, the white on black. And that case by case, but regardless, it is not worth turning New York into a Beirut. And I'm just tired of watching television and seeing how the extremists are making out. So we in the middle simply want to find each other so that we can let the extremists on both sides know enough. Your games aren't going to work on us. Your magic is not going to, your rhetoric is not going to, your opportunism is not going to work on us. We are people of goodwill. We don't want to harm. We don't want to kill. We don't want to hate. We are the legitimate New Yorker who just wants to live and let live and help live, and we are tired of being a non-entity. We are tired of having zero political weight. We're tired of being only members of the audience. I would like, for many reasons, but by the way, I'm glad to see the guardian angels here. It's a nice touch, but I would not have thought to call it. I would not have thought it would never have occurred to me. I'm glad somebody did hear what we were doing and have you down here. For many reasons, I'd like to sit down and say absolutely no more. I would like every single person who wants to speak. By the way, are you aware that they took a poll? This is going to vaccinate you if you don't want to speak. Among your greatest freedoms as an American is the freedom not to speak if you don't want to. First thing they taught me in the Boy Scouts is never help people across the street if they don't want to go, because it leads to violence every time. But they took a poll on the things that people fear most. And will you believe that leading the poll ahead of the fear of death was the fear of public speaking? Absolutely. So if you want to pass, you get amnesty and you get pardon. We welcome you nonetheless. But if you do feel you have something to say, we'd like to hear from you. I hope you will begin by introducing yourself, telling us something about where you come from so we can get a feeling for the richness of this group. I know we have black, white, male, female, left, right, American, non-American, and a great mix of professions, and all I do is walk around the table and eavesdrop. So to give us a little sense of our own dimensionality, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then what you feel the silent New Yorker can do to strengthen the middle, strengthen the rational element of New York as a vaccination against race hatred and racial violence. And I think our First Lady, who was with me 5 years ago when this idea was born, and who has founded beautiful, by the way, don't tell me there's no God. We have exactly as many seats as we have people. This is incredible. I don't mean to turn this into a theological seminar, but I could not have done that kind of arithmetic. I want a member of the sub-cabinet. She was the personal assistant of the Secretary of Education for District 2, and that involves New York, New Jersey, what a district? New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. She is a sought-after political campaign manager, guest speaker, writer, debater, and she is beloved by her students here at John Jay College. I'd like for her to give us the keynote, Lorraine Colville.
Or platform for anyone in politics, even someone we may love and revere and want to promote, because I think then we're going to lose our, and I hope it remains a people's group, a citizens group, and I see it as an important group that can fight back against crime in the city, and I would include in that crime those who would paint us as racists. And I was looking around the room and talking to some of you as you came in, and indeed, without planning and working this out, we have different ages in here, we have men and women, as Barry said, I see different colors, and ethnic backgrounds, and we have the one thing in common, that we would like to live in peace and harmony, and have some lifestyle that we can feel comfortable with. I do believe we need to, I don't think we need to elect officers or what have you, because I think we're so formalized, and we begin to think of individuals rather than the group. But I think we should begin to think of some type of an agenda or a program, and each one of us assume some particular responsibility. Because with all of our good work, and we can do a lot of good work, we have a massive enemy to overcome, and I frankly don't know how to do it. Barry Farber's voice is very important, but I see the enemy that confronts us daily, that's tearing us to pieces, is the media, the press, television, and radio. They've painted a picture of us, and they've forced us to take positions, and they are dividing. Now, how we do that, I don't know, but I certainly want to volunteer to do anything I can with the group, and I appreciate Barry Farber's comments about my work. But my main work has been and always will be as a teacher. I teach here at John Jay. Other than that's my main interest. I was born and raised and still reside in New York City, within 10 blocks of where I was born. I love New York. I love the people of the city. And New Yorkers are now different. I know we have some people from Hoboken here, Mapleton, New Jersey. They have similar interests and desires. And so as a teacher and also as a native of the city and someone who lives here, and I intend to stay here, I want to do whatever I can. And I truly believe that it's a small group such as this that can grow into a very massive movement in the city of New York if we know how to handle it. If we don't see it as a vehicle for our own egos and, well, I can say I was an officer there, maybe I can run now for the school board or challenge someone for the council or what have you. I think what we do as individuals is one thing, but the organization should not be used for any such purpose. So I would like to tell Barry and all of you, I will help in any way possible with materials and gathering things and recruiting. Sitting right in front of me is one of my students, Charlie Bessinger, who volunteered to come tonight and help out. He was just elected the president of our government club, so we may all of you in this massive movement as well. He's in my class, so he depends on his grade this semester. But I think I can do to help in terms of mobilizing with some of the students or getting some of the materials together and what have you. So I volunteer. I will be delighted to work with you, and certainly anything that Barry Farber becomes involved in is a cause that I believe in.
Thank you. I think I should point out, in case you haven't put it all together yet in your own minds, this is, I repeat, the result of 2 and only 2 announcements on 1 and only 1 radio show. And look how many we have. Tremendous turnout. If we really wanted to be a movement, and then if we were to use all the media at our command, we could fill up Carnegie Hall, Madison Square Garden, based on the success of drawing people on a cold February night. We could amount to something. We are on to something. So this group is deliberately small. Deliberately, I said I'll mention it twice, and that's it. I didn't sneak in another mention. I didn't stretch it. 2 and 2 times only. So I'm overwhelmed. Having been in radio for 30 years this year in New York, I know what you should expect from 1 announcement, 2 announcements, a whole schedule. This is epic. Let's do it like a Quaker prayer meeting. I'm just going to stand here silently and see who gets the word. Who would like to be the first to speak? Okay. Give us your name and tell us something about it.
My name is Al Lefebvre, and I'm a federal employee. One of the reasons why I'm here tonight is because of my upbringing, my childhood. I am absolutely convinced of the fatherhood of God and that we are all children of God. And that concept has sustained me throughout many, many years of my youth and, of course, in my adulthood. As a young college fellow, I even joined Interracial Justice, which was an organization by Baroness Huick. In fact, I went to visit her when she was in Chicago, and she had one of the friendship houses in the Loop. But more important, even with the federal employee years ago, and I've been with them since 1957, we were having this kind of a movement among people ourselves, where we felt, hey, something should be done. I mean, this was ridiculous that the minorities, the blacks, were not accepted as much as they should have been. And I saw it was going very smoothly and very beautifully, and it was headed in that direction. And there was a lot of fair-minded people who felt that way. They said, hey, yeah, everything being equal, give them now the benefit of the doubt, everything being equal. Unfortunately, somewhere, somehow, and I don't know how, with affirmative action, with the abuses of affirmative action, the intent was good, the application was not so good. Where if you don't get what you want, you riot, you create a scene, and the media, as you pointed out a little earlier, plays a tremendous role in alienating us. They want to sell. They don't care how we tear one another apart, as long as they attract you. And I'm very disappointed with that. So one of the reasons why I'm here tonight is hopefully we can all kind of get back to where we should have been years ago, and we lost sight of it.
Very good comment. Can we go around the table and let whosoever would like to speak in clockwise fashion, and then we'll take the outer circle.
My name is Mildred Brown. I'm from the North Bronx, and I go back to Barry for many, many years. We meet here and there on all sorts of causes. And it's just that I've been looking for a leader to direct me back into some kind of action, because we're stagnating. And I don't want to be known as the silent majority. I want to be known as the moral majority.
Okay.
I thought this was going to be a meeting on something else. I didn't realize it was. I thought it was more on crime. I misunderstood.
What would you have said if it had been a meeting on crime?
I would have said I have left New York. I'm renting elsewhere because it's gotten so bad. Isn't that too bad? I'm paying 2 rents.
Just to make you,
That's how bad it is.
just to make you feel welcome, this is not a political speech, but if anybody here does decide to run for office, I got a honey of a trick to show you. I'll show it to you right now. This, I guarantee you, will work, and I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Liberal, Conservative, this is going to get your votes. Whenever you face a meeting, you say, may I have a piece of paper? I want to write something down. Okay, you don't need this? I'm going to write something on this piece of paper, and I'm going to forward it. Now, you're not in my employ, right? We didn't rehearse this. Now, I see a show of hands. How many in this room have been a victim of crime? May I see the hand? Raise your hands. How many have been a victim of crime? All right, hold your hands up there for about 5 more seconds. 5 more seconds. Okay, hands down. Would you read what I wrote?
1/3 to 1/2.
1/3 to 1/2. 1/3 to 1/2 of every group in New York has been a victim of crime. So we're not, obviously, whosoever cares about racial peace, interracial peace, is not oblivious to crime. But the focus of this meeting is, how do we keep New York together? Because New York turning into a Beirut would be the biggest crime of all. There's no white artillery, black artillery shelling from the hills. You know. It's not that kind of thing. Not quite. Look, in my business, they got phrase makers and word choosers. It's time to be a word chooser. We are not yet, thank God, a Beirut. Okay.
No, I said Sodom and Gomorrah.
Oh, okay. Well, that we were in 1965 already. Yeah, okay. Moving around the table.
My name is Catherine Phelan. I'm an editor for a women's publication. And I read recently that 8% of the crimes committed in New York City are done so by children who were brought up on our welfare system. I think our giveaway program has not worked.
Okay.
My name is Sylvia Lance, and I'm very practical. I got plenty of ideas, but I prefer to listen to a lot of people's voices that people have to say.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm Milton Lansden, and I'm here really as an escort for my wife, and so I'll go along with the listening and to see what the objectives of this meeting are, and to familiarize myself with those who speak have to say.
I'm in the same condition. I came with them. I wasn't born here, but I love New York, and I would like to see New York a little bit better. So, I'm listening.
Now, ask where you're from?
Rome, Italy.
Good evening to everybody. I am Morris Smith, and I was born in Jamaica. And I'm here in this country. I'm a citizen, and I'm happy to be here. My main concern is race relation. I think it's very bad in the city, and I would like to see something done about it. I'm a little scared sometimes. You walk against a white person, they do like this. I mean, I'm a little scared about that. And I am a person who don't bother anybody. I'm never police never called me one time and said, I'm here, this was 50 years. And a cop has never said, hi, what are you doing here? Never happened to me. I probably do suggest or what I do a certain way, not to be make sure I'm not being charged by the cop. And I think the city government too is a part of the problem. Liberalism, I think, is the number one problem where the city do not allow people to help people to help themselves, things like that. And I think people need to help themselves a little more so that you get ahead, so you don't have to say that this person giving me this and that person giving me that. I think the most important thing that someone work for themselves and be happy with what they work for when they get home. And I thank you very much, Mr. Farber.
Thank you. Well, much of what's being said, of course, is political music to my ears, but since this is not a political meeting, but a specific focus meeting, how to prevent New York from deteriorating racially, I'll withhold my political applause. Thank you very much.
Yes, my name is Charles Gressinger. I'll withhold my rhetoric about liberalism.
Don't withhold your title.
I happen to feel that the liberal idea would be more in tune with what you want to hear, some racial getting along. I came here 10 years ago from Ohio, from Youngstown, Ohio, and after watching the steel business go thumbs up in that town, I pretty much, my father sold his furniture business, and I really said to hell with Youngstown, Ohio, and they moved to New York City. I mean, I didn't have a relative here. My name is the only one in the New York phone book. Anyways, I got a little apartment here in Midtown Manhattan, and struggled along, but lo and behold, I fell into the alcohol and the drug scene for a couple of years, got myself a job with the government, federal employee, and that made it worse because they were all drinking and drugging right on the job, and that helped me on my way into a rehab where the great baseball players all go right now. So I came out of there, and by God, two days ago, I celebrated my 4th year clean and completely off the stuff, booze and drugs. So I see this whole drug thing in a little bit, and I get into trouble on this because I really, especially in a school where there's a lot of police, I don't see it so much from the arm of the law thing because I see it. Well, another phenomenon happened, by the way. When I left Ohio, I grew up in an all-white town. I should throw that in. Something minor, right? It was an all-white community, so I didn't have. And I'll admit, I was growing up raised pretty much protected under that white umbrella. And I had my idea with blacks, and I never even met a Puerto Rican person, so I didn't know what that was all about. So I moved to New York City and West Side, Hell's Kitchen, and you can imagine I learned quickly. So, but I learned to get along with black people and working for the government. They became my best friends. I love sense of humor. I got along great with them. I don't know what it was. I'm not trying to say that we were all drinking and drugging like I was. I'm just saying I got along with them. I learned. So when I came out and my head started to get clean and everything, I started into the city university system, and I started re-educating myself. It was like my second time back into college. Things started sticking differently. They started coming at me differently. I took a class in sociology and began to see how the classes of people who suffers the most from crime, who are the bulk of the criminals, where they come from, how they're oppressed in many cases. I guess that's a liberal term, but in many cases they're stuck down in there. And I just somehow I keep coming back to that education. There's got to be. I'm so glad for city universities because they're getting there's a lot of kids coming out of high schools now without a cheap college for people to go to, another school. And believe me, the quality of education is every bit as good as it is, in most of the schools. Without that, I really fear that those kids would, be hitting the streets even in greater numbers than they are now, and be a greater problem. And I haven't had any trouble with being a victim myself because of my age and everything, but I really feel for older people because I see the way a lot of kids in the streets are just sort of looking for the weaker people to jump on. You know what I mean? And That's a scary thing, because someday I'll get older and I don't have to, feel like a coyote with his leg, having to whimper behind, having people come after me like that. That's awful. Not saying that, I could march home tonight and get beat up. I don't know if I said anything other than, yeah, right. Closure over here. I don't know. I should certainly change my thinking, though. I think very heavily towards education. How do we educate people? That's another whole ballgame, because some people, law enforcement people, think they want more money for the budget for them. More cops on the streets. Of course, the schools are all suffering now from corruption. At least two of them are, so we all assume they all are, which is a bunch of bull. There's no answers. It's just here to listen.
Would you please give your title before we move on?
Oh, I'm a student here and president of the government club. Newly elected.
Okay, thank you. Would you take over?
I'm Joe Israel. I recently, I'm an old bank employee, retired, and a new actor. And
A new actor?
yeah,
Congratulations.
which I've come back to after 30 years. But unfortunately, the steam started generating under my lid with a couple of the remarks, and I'll try to disregard that in comments. I do agree with Mr. Ressinger that education is the answer. I don't think the media is the villain at all. Education is the answer. I believe that possibly the media, to the extent that people with certain editorial powers press their kind of one-sided view, to that extent maybe the media, but in terms of media reporting, I don't believe it. Education, I think, is the answer. I think there's a terrific unevenness. I don't think this would come as too much of a surprise to anyone here, but there's a terrific unevenness in the school system between one school and another in terms of what is afforded and given the child to further his education. And I think when something is done about that, when people carry them to do something or insist that something be done about that, I think we won't have too much problem changing.
Thank you. I forgot to state as a ground rule, we are achieving nothing if certain remarks don't make you want to explode. The whole point is if we are all like-minded, then we may as well be a bed of rutabaga. The magic of what we're trying to do is not that we shall all be homogenized and all agree about affirmative action and government workers and education and discrimination and history. That's impossible. The only thing is, I am willing to state, almost as an article of faith, that I don't care what happens. I do not want to see New York dissolve in racial violence. I don't care how much merit the angry ones have. I don't care how much guilt the target bears. I don't want to see blood in the streets of New York. So that's, if maybe we're not trying to form a movement, maybe we're trying to form a new religion, where you must take that particular pledge that regardless, you will stay your hand, you will hold your temper, you will not encourage demagogues, you will not encourage extremists. My job is chasing fire engines around the world. 1 year ago today, I was in Kosovo, southern Yugoslavia, Serbs and Albanians. There's about to be civil war over there. And it is so hard to stay your hand and keep your temper when you see what is happening to their countries and you realize that we have all the chemicals here. All we need is the spark. And the media, I agree with Lorraine, the media is doing its best to set those sparks off. Otherwise, if the media were not, then half of the people who you know as racial celebrities would be racial non-entities. That's just my opinion. So don't feel you got to mute your point of view down to where it's homogenized. The whole point is, the implication is, regardless of how you feel and how much you disagree with the one across the table, that we are united in not wanting blood to run in the streets of New York.
My name is Rosalind Lieberman. I'm here with my dear husband, George. We live here in Manhattan, in the Gramercy Park area. I'm a homemaker. I'm sure I'm speaking for each and every one of you when I say that we should be so grateful to Barry Farber for prompting this little get-together. I personally am terribly, terribly delighted, and I'm so impressed with everything each one of you has said. It's so uplifting, and I feel that we will accomplish something. Now, one thing I agree with what each one said in regard to education, but how do you force these youngsters to be educated if they don't want it? We have dear friends who reside in Staten Island. They have a son who is now 20. He's a dropout. No amount of cajoling, nothing would prompt him to continue an education. He's a hater. He's a hater. He hates everyone. He hates everything. I've spoken to him endlessly. He seems to have a regard for me. He does invite me to speak to him, and I do. But nothing will help. Now, I hope this is just an exception. And yet, I have encountered youngsters who don't want an education. You cannot force them. What do we do about it? Of course, that's the basis for everything, education. But if they don't want to learn and they don't want to do the right thing, it's just running up a stone wall. That's one thing. And the other thing I want to say is I resent terribly when people from the suburbs will come in and they won't drive in. We have dear friends in Belrose, Long Island, New Jersey, Westchester. They won't come into the city. I think per capita we have, thank the Lord, less problem than there. This is a difficulty, whether it's in the surrounding area, the metropolitan area, or if it's out of the state. I refuse to say that only my beloved New York is in jeopardy. And I feel that we, as a wonderful nucleus, can do something.
Thank you. My name is George Lieberman. At this present, I have nothing to say. I agree with what everyone said. I'm in accord with all of you, but I'll pass on speed taking at this time. Thank you.
Sir.
Okay, my name is Chris Stecker. Came in from New Jersey, and I too wanted to congratulate Barry for putting this whole thing together, announcing it. And somewhat cynical about the whole thing, I listened to Bob Grant on the radio as well. And I just, huh? Yeah. I just hope something good comes from tonight, and grows from here.
Thank you.
My name is Faye Singletary, and I'm a teacher in the New York City school system. I taught elementary school grades 1 through 6 for many years, but this year I'm teaching a group of dropout students. And I feel that education is the answer. And I know that the New York school system is in disarray right now. And it seems that we have failed a lot of our students. But I truly believe that we cannot give up on the students. And I am not only talking about myself and other teachers. I'm talking about all of us. Every one of us are interrelated, and we are connected as human beings, no matter what our race is. And so therefore, we all have to do our part to help New York be a better place for us to say that New York is terrible and there's a lot of crime, and that's true. But if we do nothing about it, that's a bad reflection on all of us. And we all love New York. I'm from North Carolina, but I came to New York because I loved it and I plan to stay here. And each day I try to reach a child. And I'm not going to give up. And I hope that you won't.
Thank you. When anybody says she's from North Carolina, you never know if she's telling the truth or just saying it for the prestige. Amelia.
My name is Amelia Jaroska, and I'm a freelance artist and just a human being. I've been in New York City 25 years. I was born in New Jersey. I came here loving New York, and the way I feel right now, I feel it is hopeless. There are so many issues facing us, and it's such a transitory city. New York is so transitional. It's so hard to motivate anyone to do anything for 1 year. It's so hard to motivate. I mean, I've gone to classes. I've been in like 50 jobs in the last 25 years. It's come and go, to and fro. So many people dropping out, so many people really not being dedicated and motivated to even do their own job right. I don't know what we're going to do in New York. First time I'm wearing a whistle tonight. I walked like 10 blocks. Within 10 blocks of coming here, I was spat at, ridiculed at. Somebody says, "Are you from outer space?" I mean, finally I had this in my pocketbook, and I took it out, and I said, the next person that uses their right of free speech, I'm going to blow the whistle. And you know that about 2 blocks walking, I just had the whistle out, nobody even... They were afraid that I wanted to say something. But anyway, I believe our problem is education and home. It's a combination of education and home, education from the home.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that we need a whole, complete revamping of our school system, and that we need a variety of school systems for the variety that we are in this city. I don't think everybody is college-oriented. I don't think that all children born are meant to go to college. I think we need trade schools. For instance, all the broadcasters I've ever met, they didn't need college. All these most marvelous, brilliant people that you hear, Sally and Barry, they're not college people. They have a common sense, they had a dedication, and they've gone to certain journalistic schools and private schools, and look where they are. They're helping humanity. So I feel that we need trade schools for people, say, we should have one grammar school structure, and after that, people should choose. After they know how to read, write, and choose and care, they should go to their theater schools, they should go to their trade schools, repair shops, mechanical shops. There are so many people gifted with their hands.
You remind me of someone, and you know that I have no opportunistic vision when I praise John Lindsay. Probably the unwisest political statement anybody could make in this town. But John Lindsay did something in his term as mayor that I think exemplifies the spirit of what we had in mind when we talked about an organization working title Enough. The day after Martin Luther King was murdered, John Lindsay, against all advice, went to Harlem. I mean, do you remember the feeling in this town and in all towns? He walked the streets of Harlem with no protection except the invisible cocoon around somebody who does something that audacious. And he just wanted to show that I, as a part of white America, want to reach out in hopes that in our grief, we will not let this turn into racial warfare. Yes?
Could I continue? I just have something else to say. I believe that radio talk shows should be considered as part of school curricula. I have learned more listening to radio talk show hosts the last 2 years. I have gotten political science. I really should get a degree. I have gotten so much information, knowledge, and such a a variety of minds. I mean, everyone,
Mhm.
pro and con. It is the most amazing thing. One is so extreme in one thing, and the other one is completely opposite, and then you get this sort of a middle way. You can understand, you can begin to understand.
Right, you can relate. Our ratings considered.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Really?
My name is Paul Beckett. I grew up in West Palm Beach, Florida. I spent my latter teenage years in Miami, Florida. Since you want to deal with things coming out, I was one of the original participants of a mini riot in Miami, Florida in 1961.
Mm.
The reason behind that was that many of us had been molested by white men during our earlier years and also suffered from much police brutality. That was the only way we found as an avenue of redress, and it continues to this day. As many of you know from media representations, one police officer was convicted of the crime of murder in Miami recently. I've been in New York 20 years. I'm a forced federal retiree, which was a crime, but I have no way of addressing that through the federal government because they own the unions of federal employees. I'm an independent business person. I belong to a number of organizations in New York, all of which are trying to deal with the problems. There was another meeting last evening with the Anti-Defamation League and various representatives from groups and organizations within the city trying to deal with the same subject matter. The same references came about: the crime, the racism, the need for education. When you compile all of the information you get from group discussions, one thing stands out for me to give an opinion on. If we had worked for the people who finished school, then education might be a viable vehicle. If we had the emphasis on people being able to produce and there would be incentives and capital foundations for them to start with, then we'd have people that would go into production, which would provide them with their own employment and other people with employment. Part of the problem I see is across the country the same thing that we're trying to address here. It's happening in all major cities, and it has been so that the real criminals in the society that bring about the low-level criminals in the society are very rarely addressed. And these are the people whose names and faces are not daily brought out, that are in all three layers of the government and other places. And only when there's a controversy surrounding them personally does the society take hold of that's an issue and maybe it's connected to what we're experiencing now. Those of us who've been victims of crime would normally have a sinister attitude about the society's efforts to solve the crime problem. The police have been implicated in drug dealing and false arrests and other mischievous acts that are now getting exposure, so that makes one cynical about the police. We've had a president having to resign in disgrace on the national level, so that gives us some problems there. There's enough information out here now about CIA involvement in bringing drugs into America in relationship to the Iran-Contra thing, which was on the first day of the Iran-Contra hearings and it was squashed the first day. If we don't address all of those things and connect them like a chain down to what we are experiencing on the individual level, we will not come up, in my opinion, with viable alternatives or answers to the problems we face. We can start there. Thank you.
Again, we're scoring 10 out of a possible 10. You came on time, you came in numbers, you've all been brief, blunt, and contributory. Let's see if our luck persists and begin with the outer rim now.
My name is Eric Palmisano. I'm from New Jersey, and I just can't get married for a autograph book.
That's brief and to the point.
I would just listen tonight, and I'll pass it on to my colleagues.
That's funny. That reminds me. That reminds me of a contest we had on the radio to see who could come up with the best clean limerick. We had a clean limerick contest, and it was a flop of a contest because the entire nation could only come up with 2 clean limericks. The first one, this does not apply to you, was there was a faith healer from Deal who said, although pain is not real, when I sit on a pin and it punctures my skin, I just like what I fancy I feel.
Oh, my.
The other clean limerick that does apply to you is a rather tall, a circumspect gentleman from Hyde in a funeral procession was spied. When asked who was dead, he giggled and said, I don't know, I just came for the ride.
My name's Paul Daniels. I'm from New Jersey. I'm a TV commentator, not the enemy type.
But forgive me, may I interrupt? Paul asked me if he could come as a private citizen. He is not here to cover these proceedings because I promised unto you that no media would be invited. Why? Media.
Cool. Yeah, Barry just asked about titles, but just briefly, the concept of this show is to let people who are usually shunned by the media, when opinions are being brought about at different events that are happening in the world and our state, they are shunned. I let them come on and speak for 50-some minutes and give the other side. It's balancing out the show. But there's a line in this letter that was sent to all of us. People of New York, all religious, racial creeds, colors, were frankly sick of attempts by publicity seekers to pander to hatred and polarize groups against groups, of all races, creeds, and colors to speak out. A recent example, I had a fellow named David White, black, blind fellow, who was trying to get the New Jersey chapter of course started. He gave a phone number out, and he received calls later. And, you know, they're used to Barry attacking the racial hustlers, the racial racketeers. They're used to Curtis Leo attacking them. They're used to Roy Innes attacking Bob Grant. They're not used to people they don't know attacking. And a lot of calls David White got is outraged people. How can you let sit there with that white man talking that trash? Cursing them. I'm not going to repeat the language they gave him. And then when David wanted to speak, click, they hung up. See, they don't like that. They can deal with Barry, they can deal with Bob Grant. They can't deal with us in here. We can speak. The same thing that Barry speaks about. Roy asked me one time, he says, when he meets people on the street, they say, I like what you said, man. And I say, what are you whispering for? Because they're intimidated by too many leaders throughout our nation. They can't speak the truth. They can't speak because of the Al Sharptons and Rachel Hustlers that are just publicity seekers. So I think that people of all races, creeds, and colors want the same thing. I live in a racially mixed city. Parents want decent schools for their kids. They want a good quality of life. They want to walk around to the neighbor's house down the street at 10 o'clock at night, not to be harassed or not to be They don't want drug dealers in their neighborhoods. But we have to get together. Everybody wants the same thing, no matter what race, creed. All decent people want the same thing. So if this group can bring about that, bring about colorblindness to crime, I mean, white on black crime front page. Black on black crime, which is epidemic in the city. Page 56, maybe. Maybe. We have to speak out as a group. All races, creeds, colors, speak out on it. And then these people that hung up on David White are really going to start shivering, and then we can outvoice them. So I think it's a very, very important movement that you're doing, Barry. We can't just let Barry Farber, Bob Grant, Curtis Lee, and Roy Innes speak out. We, the average people, as Barry said, hopefully this organization will make it so about the truth. We can talk about the truth like I'm talking now. So I think we should focus on that one sentence. We're frankly sick and tired of publicity seekers. Let us average people speak up against the racial hustle list. New York's #1 mecca in everything, and it's starting to become the mecca of racial discord. We have to turn that around.
Thank you, Paul, very much.
That was good.
There was a 3-year-old girl, I don't know whether she ever existed or not, but she got a lot of credit during the Vietnamese War. She allegedly turned to her father and said, Daddy, what if they gave a war and nobody showed up? Well, our dream, at least my dream, and having started this, is that what if a racial hustler, black or white, what if an extremist, black or white, exhorted his people to violence and nobody was there? See, if the word spreads that we, the people, are not in the market for such exhortations, their power will be effectively disconnected. Yes, sir.
My name is Ray Word, and I'm also from New Jersey. And basically, I agree with what all my life. I'm like, I'm 36 years old now. And most of my life I've lived in New Jersey. I've worked in Manhattan for like 10 years or so. But the thing is, I understand like all the, all the things he's saying. I understand it exists. I even understand why it exists. How to solve it is a little more difficult because, I mean, a lot of the people who are extreme on this side are so extreme they don't even want to talk to these people unless you talk to them. I mean, you don't get to know them on a personal level, so you always sort of see them as that person, in the sort of that sort of part of the polarization. Then too, I would say with a lot of the racial hustlers. I mean, a lot of people, and there's enough of them, to talk about on both sides and every nationality. I mean, I think another thing too. I mean, since we're living like in a capitalistic society, there's always like that motive for somebody to turn into a racial hustler, to turn that into dollars, because if they get the media, there's some way that they can turn that into dollars. And the media is happy to do it because they sell more papers. So, I mean,
Glad you touched on that. That's something I
the
can.
thing is, I think the more groups we have like this, the better. I mean, because once you get to the point where there are more people, like this to say that it's not, a black issue or white issue, it's a people issue. Once you've got more of them than the others, then I think things will get pretty much straightened out. But, it's a very hard task because a lot of people are just so set in their ways.
Very important point.
Yes.
I call it the evil symbiosis. Take an analogy that has nothing to do with race. The psychic and the broadcaster. The broadcaster knows that psychic has no power. The broadcaster knows that psychic cannot tell him what time it's going to be an hour from now. But the psychic talks such a good game, and the switchboard lights up, and people call in to get their readings. So what the psychic and the broadcaster are saying to each other is, look, I can help you, and you can help me. I, the psychic, can help you build your ratings. You, the broadcaster, can help me build my business, because with the fame I'm getting on your radio or television program, I can charge $100 for a reading. You understand? Same thing here. Broadcaster and the racial hustler, black or white, feed each other on an evil symbiosis. The hustler helps the broadcaster build ratings. The broadcaster helps the hustler become somebody. What would they? A very interesting question. What would person X be without media exposure? In poker, it takes jacks or better to open. Without media exposure, John F. Kennedy was a councilman, a congressman, a senator, then began to get, he had something. He had jacks or better. But there are many people, the ones causing the most problem, who were nothing, who were zeros until they injected themselves successfully into the media.
My name is Ronald Baxley. I'm from Flushing. Like the gentleman over there, I have the same problem. I'm still recovering from it. It's about 20 years. I haven't heard anyone else say it, but I'm going to admit it. I've been prejudiced. However, I'd like to say one thing. I've been in and out of the VA hospital a lot. And I noticed in a time of distress, people are hurting, everyone's there to help someone. And something that's never going to change, I'm never going to be able to notice that he's not black and I'm white. But right now, I'm digging my way out of this hole, and I don't care. And like I said, everyone works together in a bad time, a time of distress. That's what we have right now. And I'd like to see if we can figure out a way to do it. I don't know the answer, but that's why I'm here.
Interesting statement. In other words, you felt you have been prejudiced and you're trying to...
I admit it. I admit it.
Interesting. That's a very valuable thing for you to tell us. I appreciate that.
My name is Alan Freed. I'm from Staten Island. I came from a, let's say, a lower class background, working class. And the thing that my parents gave me was love and understanding and an education. And with that, gave me the tools to make something out of myself, and by many standards, I'm reasonably successful with things. When I was very young, I was very, very liberal. As I got a little bit older, I became kind of a fence sitter, and as I got a little bit older still, I became very conservative. And in that evolutionary process for myself, I really never took, even when I was younger, I didn't take much of a stand on many issues. Even in those liberal days, I went along with a lot of things that were going on, including protests against the war and things like that. But one of the things that always bothered me, even back in those days, was that voices of reason were shouted down, even by people that I was supporting in terms of being liberal and being opposed to the war. And speakers that wanted to present another side of the story could not talk. And this is going back to the late 1960s. And I think that situation has carried over today and has just been magnified. People hear about what's going on in some of the college campuses today. Even people like Chief Patrick that can't speak on a college campus. Whether or not you agree with her is not the issue. The fact is, it should just shout it down. Anyway, well, I have to sell insurance for a living, and also where I grew up, I was actually not exposed to any minorities at all. I grew up kind of in a white Jewish ghetto, actually, and had very little experience with any minorities. Interestingly enough, along the way in my insurance career, the two people that helped me the most at the time when I needed it had to be black fellows that were well-educated and fair and objective, and it was not a question of, an interesting thing that when we were together, we didn't think in terms of black or white or anything, we were just decent guys. Anyway, as I evolved and continue to evolve, I decided that it's very important for people to speak up and to get involved, and I think that's the key issue, even if some other people said it. Whether or not you're in agreement on the issue, the important thing is to take a stand, and the important thing is to let people know how you feel about it. And too many people are apparently going along with what some supposed leader says. Now, I always hear reports about, in the black community about, Reverend Al Sharpton or some of these guys don't speak to the black community, and there are a lot of people that just want to get along. But somewhere along the line, these people aren't voicing their opinion. Nobody is saying, what's going on. I do think the media is very, if we talk about responsibility, if we're talking about what's the cause, sure, we go back to education, that's fine. I don't think we here have the power, to do something about the educational system. I think personal responsibility is one of the key things that is lacking in any of the discussions that go on. It's always what will the government do, or what will somebody else do, or collective responsibility. If a black shows a white, it's the black community's fault, it's not the black individual's fault, it's not the parents' fault. And for some reason, the community rallies around the perpetrator, whether he's black or whether he's white. They just rally around him for no apparent reason. I think the media is, feeds off of this stuff, and something has to be done to combat the situation with the media. I think that politicians are the other, culprits here, because they pander to all the violence, they pander, they get votes on it.
Alan, you have come up with something that prompts me to break my pledge and say a little bit more than I had intended to, and that is something specific, something specifically good that can come of this meeting. Now, everybody thinks that people in the media and in Congress, people outside the media and outside government think that we get hundreds of letters and telexes and faxes and phone calls. We do not. We do not. I work for a 50,000 watt radio station in New York City. It can reach 25 million people. When I get one letter, I don't mean a press release, I mean one legitimate handwritten letter, that is a trend. 2 letters saying the same thing are an indication. 3 are a groundswell. Now, Mike Wallace hates this story because he didn't realize he was going to be a famous network star when he wrote it, but it's in print. It's in the April 1961 issue of True magazine, just to show you what we can accomplish with something you suggested. Mike Wallace was bragging, in effect, of how he managed to manipulate CBS with a phony letter. He works for CBS now. I admitted how he faked CBS out of something it wanted to do with a phony letter campaign. Mike Wallace had a show on Channel 13 before it was public television. It was a regular commercial television station. He had arranged an exclusive with the notorious Nathan Leopold, you know, the famous murderer from Chicago, you know, Leopold and Loeb. Loeb died in prison. Leopold was being released. And Mike Wallace had arranged to have an exclusive right there at the gate in Joliet, Illinois, when Nathan Leopold was released. Mike Wallace learned that his exclusive had been broken, that CBS was going to be there too. So Mike Wallace talked to his producer, Al Ramrus, and Al Ramrus picked up the phone and called 10 different friends in 10 different cities. Within the next couple of weeks, the chairman of the board and the president of CBS began to get letters. Not many, 10 letters, all saying, "We have heard that you intend to project the image of this murderer into our homes. Would you please tell us if this is true? How low can you get?" And they all got letters of apology from the president of CBS, and CBS withdrew its coverage of the release of Nathan Leopold. Now, as it turned out, things went wrong, and Mike Wallace didn't get it either, but that doesn't count. The important thing is that 10 letters convinced CBS that they were wrong. Now, I'm not going to tell you which station I'm talking about, and please let there be no laughter. But in my so-called career, I have worked for a station where race hatred was really a big part of the act. It is not part of the act anymore because enough letters came in to convince management that the people didn't like it, that there was a reaction against all this racial pandering in Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and Tawana Brawley and Harlan Bedford Stuyvesant and blacks murdered Joseph Hawkins, that there was a reaction against stirring up audiences with that kind of material, and the policy came down, find other subjects. Find other subjects. Don't use black and white relations as a trampoline upon which to cavort for ratings. So we're more than 10 people in this room. If you want action, until we really decide what we can do, multiply our numbers, have the next meeting in a big auditorium somewhere, Carnegie Hall maybe, or a smaller one, you know, but until we decide what we're going to do with this nucleus, or what we can do with it, or what the nucleus wants to be done with, if you will simply haul off on your own as an individual sharpshooter, postcard, you don't have to write elaborate letters, don't wait for a professional word processor to help you. Legible handwriting is more effective than a professional, a nice literate letterhead, lawyer, accountant, doctor, vice president of an insurance company with correct spelling. One page, never more than one page. Make it less than one page with a lot of white on it. You direct that to the medium that offends you by playing on racial hatreds, and you will be amazed. I have seen it happen. I'm not going to tell you how soon, because that would give away which station it was. But I have seen that magic work. It is like holding up the cross to Dracula. They hate intelligent letters indicating that there's a reaction. They like to think that they're programming geniuses. They see 10 or 15 letters, they say, this worked for a while, but it's getting sour. You can tell by these letters it's getting sour, and they will lay off. And that is a worthy cause. Yes, sir. First in our angels.
Yo, good evening. My name is Ralph Hughes, codename Nightclothes from the New York City Guardian. I've been living in New York all my life. I've been a victim of crime. Like he says, he's prejudiced. He's not the only one. I am too. Everybody else is too. And I can prove it. By some of hands, who in here loves crime? See, I can prove it. Everyone in here is prejudiced. I am prejudiced against crime. I am prejudiced against drugs. There needs to be something to stop it. You talk about this is not even 1% to stop the crime, drugs, and racial tension that's out there. Not even 1%. We gotta get more of these people to progress upon it. Like he said, well, he's prejudiced. He's not the only one. Now he's not alone. You see a lot of black people committing these crimes. It's true. All right? all these crimes being committed, most of these crimes being committed is from teenagers or people with that range of 15, 21, 22, those age range. It's because where they live at. Some people, they live in Harlem, they were brought up in that community, so they're going to do what they see the next person doing. It's like people, they take guns and they show it off in front of their friends, so their friends can say, he's crazy, man, I like to hang around with him, you know how to have fun. That's not having fun, okay? Or they like to show off in front of the girls, okay? That's not having fun either. I mean, I read Roots, okay? But it'll make me feel like I want to shoot every Caucasian or wasp I see out here. It's not, okay? What we want to do is we want to stop it, all right? Go to them, talk to them. How can we stop this, okay? That's what we're doing today. How can we stop it? What can we do? You see, we go back to school. It's true. We're not, we taught about George Washington, Lincoln, okay? We're not taught enough about Marcus Garvey or Malcolm X, okay? We're not. Maybe if we was taught more about them and know that Martin Luther King was trying to go up to a Caucasian and say, shake my hand, you gotta stop this, maybe they would stop it, okay? Because as one of the speech, a little black boy and a little white girl shook hands, okay? They hugged each other. Racial tension is going up. It's coming down a little, but not enough. Not enough. You got to go all the way down. Okay? We need more people like you to stop it. All right? Thank you.
We've covered a couple of things here, and the thing that really concerns me is the family. I think we have to start there somehow. Education is fine, but it won't really do anything or even put a dent into the issue unless we address the family and what's going on in the home. I was brought up in the Bronx and educated in Manhattan, but I really would like to see us address the family and on an individual level begin to assume responsibility for doing that. We can talk about barriers like, I forget the gentleman's name, but he spoke about many barriers in the government, and we can get kind of tangled in that spider web. But we have to take responsibility, like you said, and I like what you said about writing letters, but I think it has to be more than writing letters. We have to become visible, not just sit in the background and write letters, but also make a statement up front where it counts to our friends, to our families, and in our homes, and raise up our kids to know that, you see, I go back to this, I thought about this before. How many black families would think well of one of their daughters or sons marrying a white man or a white woman? Or how many white families would think well of their daughter or their son marrying a black man or a black woman? We're all prejudiced in a sense, but we have to come down to the basic thing. And the core of that is how are we bringing up our children at home? What are they seeing at home? We can talk a good game in front of people, but what are we doing in the home? What are those sly remarks we make about races in the home? What are we doing with our family? I think it brings a lot to bear on society itself. We have to address that.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Ken Jones, and I've been concerned about race relations for as long as I can remember. I think a lot of that concern had to do with my desperately trying to see the bigger picture as to why we're here in the first place. And I really, I believe in God. I believe that in His infinite wisdom, He had a purpose in mind for creating people that have different skin color and so forth. And it's very easy to hate people because of something that you see as different. But I think it's much more. I think challenges is what builds character. And indeed, it's a challenge in this day and age to love someone not because of, but in spite of. And I think that's the key. I see one of the problems that exist in this city and indeed in our country is a lack of understanding, a tremendous amount of bitterness on both sides. Also, I feel that a lot has been said about education, and education indeed is I think a lot of emphasis needs to be placed on family values. You see, I believe that's where it starts, because that is where a child needs to be taught about accountability, about responsibility, about respecting himself and respecting others. I'm not going to leave that to the educational system to teach my daughter, for example. I'm going to teach her, while I have her, about being accountable and about being responsible, about treating others with respect. I can't expect the school system to instill those principles in her. So I think that is very important. We missed the boat, I think. If we focus a lot of attention on what's going on with Iran-Contra and government corruption, you see, because I have no control over that. I only have control over my life, you see. And what we need to teach our children is that despite what may be going on around them, that in the final analysis, the decisions they make in their life are decisions that they themselves have to be held accountable for. And I think that is what will make us strong, whoever we are, whether we're black or white. I think excuses and placing blame make us weak and vulnerable.
Thank you, John.
Hello, everybody. My name is Amin Torres. I'm in Spain from New York City right now.
Forgive me, what is your first name?
Amin Torres.
Amit.
I think that all what you people have said is very good, but I think I will hold my comments and I'll pass on.
Okay, thank you, Amit.
My name is Mary Maxey. I'm a retired senior citizen and not a good speaker. But I'd like to dispel the myth that there is a monolithic black community. There is no such thing. I'm the proof of that, because I think differently than most of what I hear on the talk shows, New York Times, the liberal papers. I live in constant fear of being attacked by blacks, and I'm very frustrated. I'm very bitter. I'm bitter at politicians, black politicians, at black parents that are raising their children with no discipline, at black preachers that they all seem to take the side of the criminal. I live next door to a black school, and what I see coming out of that school is unbelievable. You can't ride the subway, and I live in Harlem. You can't ride the subway between 11:30 and 12:30 because of the hoodlum activity that goes on. I see black women my age sitting on the trains. You can just see the fear in their eyes because these hoodlums are swinging on the train, they're kicking out the doors, the windows, they're yelling and screaming, cursing, calling people's names. They walk, they come through the porch, they look right down at you like they're going to attack you. You're sitting there, you got to collapse, you're so afraid. Nobody, no black people, no black men, politicians, preachers are addressing this problem. Plus the New York Times, the liberal newspapers are pandering to this sort of thing. And it just keeps me so frustrated. I cannot enjoy my retirement.
Very poignant statement.
Great.
I don't care what blacks disagree with, somebody has to say that they're not speaking out. And I blame us, the black people, the black men. Well, what happened to our generation? What happened? They're letting these young women just take over. What's happening?
See that?
And this gentleman
There you
over here is
go.
talking
She
about
said it all.
CIA and all this big time stuff. I can't wait for that. I want something to happen now.
We'll let you. Because the response should come at this point, we will recognize, will you give your name again, and then we'll proceed around before we have any more crossfire.
Paul Beckett, I agree with you, so don't get the wrong impression about how I'm going to frame my response to that. What we're experiencing in the truth that you spoke is the manifestation of self-hatred. If I cannot like or love myself, I will not like or love you either. Well, I'm saying for the benefit of the rest of the, I'm not talking about slavery, man. I'm not talking about slavery. I'm talking about today.
for the benefit of the rest of the people in this room. Okay? Violence is glorified in this society, and crime does pay. We have the glorification of the mafia almost daily in this city. Glorification of it. They're in the business of crime. They call it organized crime. So when people see that as a viable alternative to the hard-working, educated way of doing things, they will opt generally for the easy way out.
Okay. What is your name again?
Ronald Baxton.
Okay.
I've seen, it's a double-edged sword. I don't live too far from a junior high school where 99% of them are white, and the same type comes out.
Okay, an interesting comment. Yes, sir. Right.
I've noticed.
Forgive me, would you give your name?
Oh, sorry. My name is Richard Tanian. I'm a graphic artist. For the last 15 years, I live right here in Hell's Kitchen. Past 10, I was on 47th Street. Past 5, my wife and my 2 kids lived at my mother-in-law's house over here at 56th Street. I was able to buy a house to move to New Jersey, so we have been living in the city the past 2 years. I've noticed everyone's talking about like the media is going to help us. I don't think we should look for the media as a partner. Because like some of the fellas said, they're out to make money. And race stories sell a lot of papers. A lot of people like to watch it on TV. The only thing we can do is maybe use it to our benefit. Don't ever expect them to be nice and not make things worse. But I think it's going to happen no matter what. And like Emily said, education is not for everybody, I don't think. And we seem to have this dream that everybody should go to college. And if you don't go to college, you're not going to get a job. I'd like to see that maybe if that was changed, I think it would make it better. Looking at my own personal life, applying to these other things. Like I have 2 younger brothers who dropped out of school, didn't even finish high school, and luckily they got a good job, and they're making money doing construction work, and they can make more money than me going to high school, college. I think that's a way to help us. And, also, I have to agree with this lady here. I think Paul is too vague. We chase after the CIA and all that other stuff, and we just go around in circles. It's hard to find.
Let me just come to Paul's defense. Paul is not saying just because a doctor spends his life fighting cancer does not mean he's therefore automatically pro-diphtheria. I don't think Paul is saying that what Mary says is irrelevant. Paul is simply pointing to other things that concern him. I don't think that makes him a war criminal. I'm trying to put a lid on Crossfire because it's getting dark out, and we have a whole wall who hasn't spoken yet.
Okay, well, anyway, instead of attacking from the top, I think we should get it from the bottom. And help the kids and help the families instead of getting the 1 or 2 people that may be doing something so they don't even know what it is yet.
Yes, Mary.
Living in New York is like having the death penalty and not using it. You have everything here, everything in the world is here. You can't enjoy it. I can't go to the movies, I can't go to plays, I can't go to the park, I can't go to church. I can't do anything because of fear of crime.
Well, I have the feeling that I don't convince as many people over 50,000 watts as you have in this room. Angel number 3.
My name is Tony Mapu, known as Rambo. I'm a guardian angel for the past 8 years. And I've seen things going on back and forth like this lady saying. Crimes going on every day. I've seen these youngsters, 14 years old also, carrying weapons in school, stealing one another, killing one another. Everything is going crazy with them. I'm not even racist. We got black guardian angels, Jewish guardian angels, Spanish guardian angels, we got all different kinds. And we are one all together. We are brotherhood. We're all together, we fight crime together, we try to teach other kids, and we go to meetings, we go to different schools to tell them not to do this kind of crime.
Where are you? Fridays at 11 p.m. I will tell you,
Can't be everywhere.
Where, yeah, I didn't see anybody that night. Right.
They're gonna need this hall soon for another summit meeting, so we better proceed. Angel number 4.
My name is William Diaz. My code name is Swan. I'm operations coordinator for Guardian Angels. I also work as a social worker with homeless kids in my own neighborhood in Brooklyn. I agree with what she said and what this gentleman said over here. Education is important, but it starts at home. I'd like to relate an experience that I had 2 years ago in Forsyth County, Georgia. I had the displeasure, and I use the term loosely, I had the displeasure of having to go over there to participate in the largest civil rights march since the days of Martin Luther King. It seemed 75 people on Martin Luther King's birthday were marching through Forsyth County, and they were pelted by stones and bottles by the Ku Klux Klan. Now, I read about the Ku Klux Klan, and I watched these Martin Luther King specials that used to come on, and I used to see stories about it. I saw the movie with Paul Winfield portraying Martin Luther King. But when I went over there and I actually saw these things, when I actually saw David Deuce, who was the Grand Imperial Wizard, marching with these people with his white robe, wearing army fatigue, and I was an army man with a Nazi swastika on it, it scared the hell out of me. I've been shot, I've been stabbed, I've been beaten, I've been sent to the hospital several times as a guardian angel in my 9 years, and I have never felt more fear than I felt in Forsyth County because of the hatred that I saw. And if it was hatred because people had gotten, they had been robbed, or somebody had been killed, raped, sodomized, whatever, it's a little more understandable. But just based on, on the color of a person's skin, it was quite frightening. And I believe that education at home is where it starts. Because I had a 5-year-old girl, when I was marching through there, we stopped. A little 5-year-old girl like this, the most angelic looking little thing I saw. Sky blue eyes, chubby little cheeks, the most adorable thing you could see. And I went to touch her chin, and I said, "How you doing, sweetheart?" And God struck me down. That little girl hit me in the hand and said, "Don't touch me, nigger."
Oh,
A 5-year-old girl. I said, a 5-year-old girl actually know what she's talking about? Guys in Howard Beach that killed Michael Griffith, were they born racist? As soon as the doctor smacked them in the butt, they say, "Hey, I'm a racist." They were taught this at home. They were taught this at home. We stereotype, and I'm mentioning myself, because I did when I was growing up. When I was growing up, I stereotyped because my mother, and I admit it, my mother and my father didn't educate me enough. If I saw a black going around, bebopping the way we say, walking like that, I instantly say, "This guy's a hoodlum." Same thing with a Puerto Rican wearing dungarees or FC boots the way I am right now. I stereotyped until I had to educate myself. I made friends, I was open-minded, and I said to myself, "Hey, this is not the way, I was told it was." Media is important, plays a big role in it, but I'm a firm believer. And not to say that what everybody else said about the media is not true. It does play a big role. But perfect example, I'm sure everybody here has a food that they don't like. I, for one, don't like sweet pickles. If I don't like sweet pickles, nobody's going to make me eat sweet pickles. So whatever the media puts down, you believe what you want to believe. That's what I believe. And stereotyping has a lot to do with it, and education starts at home. The parent has to put the fear of God in children and let them know the way it is. Like this man said, he's not going to let anybody educate his daughter except himself. Okay. The school can take care of the academic stuff. You got to educate her on life.
I want to interject something. I like to interject one thing about education. We have a lot of kids who don't have families too. So you have to be aware of that in case you're not. So that's why the schools really do have to educate kids a lot of times.
I'd like to point out something. I wasn't raised up with my mother. My father was murdered. That's why I became a guardian angel. So I kind of did it on my own. And I was lucky enough to find a man by the name of Curtis Lewa who helped me along that way. I really feel that if a person really wants to change himself, it has to come from within. Or a lot of people do a lot of talking, but a lot of people don't do enough listening. That's a big problem.
Thank you, William.
My name is Lenny, and I agree with much of what has been said. And I know the time is fleeting. This lady said a lot of how I feel. I think it's important for us to, if we can, Barry, next time, or you have access to the answer Orientals because this black and white thing is bogged down into misperceptions. Because there are Chinese, there are Japanese, there are East Indians
Korean.
who also have suffered from certain things as far as discrimination and cultural differences. So I think that you could sort of extend it out further.
Well, I didn't have an idea for our next meeting until the last hour or so, but I do, and I'll spell that out briefly and bluntly when we get to the last of our members. Yes, sir. Lorraine has already spoken. I'm not bypassing.
My name is Jim O'Connor, and I'm a retired public employee. I worked for government most of my life, but I did work in the private sector for a long time. I agree with much of the sentiment that has been given out here tonight. I think that what we're talking about with regard to education, I think sometimes we have different levels of an idea of what education means. I don't think that anybody is suggesting that if the entire world were to get a bachelor's degree, that prejudice was going to disappear. That's absolutely ridiculous. I came from this neighborhood. I was born a few blocks down here on 64th Street. I went to school here, and at that time, remarkably enough, it was an integrated neighborhood. I want to make this statement. Relations 50 years ago, when I was 8 years old, were much better than they are today. Much better. I played basketball in this building, in this school, in Harron High School. And it was astonishing how well people got on, not only here, but in the public pool around the corner on 60th Street. There were very, very few racial problems. I can tell you that I have watched over the years the separation, the polarization, and I don't know what it's coming from. Father Coughlin is gone. I'm amazed at the problems that didn't build up, because in those days, when I was a youth, everybody was no good except your own family or your own kind, and even the rich Irish were no good. Well, they must have got that way because they were thieves. It was an astonishing thing that we were able to get along so well with only this, what I call a peripheral animosity towards other people, and everybody went to the same school. Years and years later, when I went to Brazil with the Peace Corps, and the national hero was a fellow named Pele. And everybody in Brazil knew who Pele was, and only half the people in Brazil knew who the president was. You get different perspectives going to different places and learning different things. Now, I know Barry's been all over the world 3 times, and this is more or less his story rather than mine. I believe in the circumstance of education, but education doesn't mean form. I think education is to instill in people that much of what they say, sometimes, not even intentionally, is unexpectedly brought into a belief by other people who want to have somebody, and I think somebody picked up on someone to blame because they haven't been as successful as they wanted to be all their life.
I will quote 5 or 10 of the remarks in this room on the air tomorrow, and one of the remarks I'm sure I will quote is, if the whole world got a bachelor's degree, very good. Okay, coming in for a landing now.
My name is Bob Krause. I live in Whitestone. I enlisted in the Army when I got out of high school, and if I had to fight then, I would fight for the same reason I would fight now, which is not only to save my own life, but to save the people I feel for and this nation's wonderful beauty. But I would not fight for democracy. As a matter of fact, the one wish I would have is that I could be on a nationwide primetime show as the only person in a debate against, and I would oppose democracy. I think democracy is the cause not only of racial troubles, but it's the cause of all of our frustrations. The 2 things that I believe are causing racial problems this, that there are a lot of people who do like to live in a melting pot, but there probably are an equal number of people, and possibly even more, who feel that their culture is too weakened by living in a melting pot. And they also, they also need a leader who is like themselves, who understands them and their culture better.
The only thing worse than a quitter is somebody who's afraid to begin. We were not afraid to begin. This is not what they meant when they wrote South Pacific, but this really was an enchanted evening. I will get many, many broadcasts out of what's been said. The next step is this. We now know we can deliver people on a cold February weeknight with 2 announcements. We will meet, Lorraine and I. We've got your names and numbers. Let me give you my number right now. If you want to do more than just come to the next meeting, if you want to help us plan, if you want to do some of the work, don't tell me now. Call me. Call me personally, 212-787-2110, 212-787-2110. The next meeting will have a lot more announcements on a lot more radio stations, newspapers. Again, we will not have media. We will not have politicians speak. Please don't leave unless we have your name and number. If you got our letter, we've got your name and address. If you were brought by somebody and would still like to work with us, make sure we have your name and address. This really, this turns my tired blood into sparkling burgundy. We need the decent blacks, whites, and Hispanics to rally against the indecent blacks, whites, and Hispanics. And whosoever tries to polarize one against another should get the sharp end of the pole. Thank you very much. Yes, Paul? Oh, yeah.